Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley. What was your thoughts on that fight overall?
I don't mind the entertainment part of it. What I do get bothered by is Jake Paul and anyone else pretending that he's really good.
Yeah.
Like that really bothers me.
And showing the opposite.
You know, when he talks
technically.
Yeah, like when he threw the first jab and his back foot came off the ground, like just like I can't even imagine what Mark Montoya would do to me if I ever did that in practice.
Yeah.
Like he would just pull me aside and tear me a new asshole. But he just makes very amateur mistakes. It's not his fault because he's an amateur.
Right.
Like he's making mistakes that he should be making at this point in his career. But, you know, hearing him talk about all the work he's put in the last 18 months, you know, and there's, you know, like this next year will be my 15th year in the sport. Like I don't give a shit what you've done in the last 18 months, you know, like I think everyone deserves an opportunity to fight. It's the same argument I had with CM Punk. Like, what are we going to stick CM Punk in LFA and Denver or something? Like, he doesn't have a choice. He's kind of got to go to the UFC. It's the only place that can really handle him, or at least his profile.
Right.
So no matter what, Jake Paul's always going to be in big arenas and big fights, and they're going to be big draws because of his YouTube channel. I'm not hating on that at all. Like, I don't want to hate on anyone else making money or doing well for themselves. I'm all about that. It's the part where, like, he gets put above a lot of us and he's better than we are. He's, you know, like, that's the stuff that bothers me.
Yeah.
Like, he's not good. He sucks really bad at fighting, and that's okay. But let's just not pretend that you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like secretly kind of hoped at the end, you know, since it was such a close fight and it was getting those later rounds, that Tyron would just pick him up and just slam him down and mount him and just hold him down until they pulled him off, just to show the world that in a matter of like 30 seconds in a real fight, what would happen and how vulnerable he would be to a takedown and just getting his head smashed in without actually having to do it. I think that's what I would have done. I would have probably just forgotten about the money and the penalties and just did that just to be the guy to show the world, okay, I went into your game in boxing and it was a close fight. Who knows who would have won, but at the end of the day, we saw that there's a big difference in what I do and what you do, and I just want to make that clear for everyone else moving forward. But I mean, to see a guy that trains so hard not have a six-pack at all, or be lean and be so young, and then also be exhausted after 2 rounds of boxing, it's like I mean, he was literally exhausted on the ropes after the second round, which is, you know, Tyron should have went in and been more active. He was very good on the pressure and control, but just not unleashing those hands, which I think if he had done, especially when he was in the ropes, he could have finished with that knockdown or whatever. So I don't know about the whole like training hard thing, unless he's just really getting ate up with the pressure when he goes out there. But his body doesn't show that he's training too hard either. I haven't seen guys that are putting the time in that he's saying that he's putting in, and then coming out there looking so soft, like, and to be so young and not so big, structured. You know, it's not like he's a big guy. You know, he should be a little more ripped than that. And I think the fight really showcased what I'm saying. I mean, I think a mediocre amateur boxer would tear him apart. I'm not even talking about like the best amateur boxer. I'm talking about like a good medium to high level amateur boxer would tear him apart. But he's pulling these guys in, and I agree with you on the same thing as far as he's pulling in the MMA fighters, you know, the beasts that have like thousands of weapons they have to think about at any given time in this kinetic chess, this human kinetic chess that we're playing out there. And then you're taking all those weapons away, like 90-something% of your weapons away, and then you're having to get used to doing something that you haven't practiced, and you have like one fight camp to get ready for it. And then he's like, I'm beating up all these MMA fighters, but you're playing a whole different. It's like going golfing. I mean, it's different than that. Obviously, it's combat sports, but it's like it's like Taekwondo versus MMA. It's a whole different sport. So that's what bothers me. Probably the same as you. Is like he's using us to try to gain himself into this alpha category of being such a badass. But I think that fight, aside from his hand getting raised at the end, was pathetic. Like, it was horrible. Like, I mean, you see the other guys on the card, how they fought to the end. Everybody fought to the end, and they looked pretty decent. Nobody was that tired or that exhausted, and they did have hard fights. And he was just exhausted, hanging on for dear life and like not doing anything. To me, it didn't show much, you know. And again, I'm not trying to bag on him. I'm not trying to hate the guy. The guy's up and coming and stuff, but just how he talks compared to how he fights, that's the difference, I think, that really bothers me more than anything.
Yeah, that's 100% me. I don't really care how good he is. You know, it doesn't matter to me, but it's the way that he talks. It's also he's like 6'2". He's like 6'2", walks around at 200, you know, plus 200. Like, stop fighting welterweights. Yeah. Like, fight someone your own damn size. Like,
that's not
and
retired.
Stop fighting wrestlers. Like, as good as Tyron is, That's not what Tyron's best at.
Yeah.
You know, Ben Askren, you know, if him and Ben Askren in a wrestling match, Ben Askren rips one limb off at a time.
Absolutely.
But he's not a wrestler, or he's not a striker. So, you know, he's not calling out the Anthony Smiths of the world.
No.
He's not, because he knows,
No.
like, I can do that just as well as I do anything else. And it's not because he needs a draw. He's got 20 million YouTube subscribers or some shit. Like, he has plenty of draw. Like, he can draw on his own. That's how big of a star he is. So he doesn't need another big star on the other side. He's kind of like Connor in that weird he's in that weird place where he can just be the one guy that draws, but he's never going to fight anybody that can, you know, his team is very smart. They're picking very smart opponents. They're not, you know, they're shorter guys. They're stocky. They're wrestlers. He can stay away and stay safe for the most part. I just don't, you know, I was frustrated in Tyron because I know Tyron's better than that.
Yeah.
And it's the same problem he's been having in his MMA career. He's just stuck in neutral. You know, he does a really good job of taking the distance and taking the space, and then he gets there and doesn't do anything with it. Like at this point, you already made over $1 million. Just let him fly. Who gives a shit? And you end up losing anyways. So like now I bet he's looking back like, I lost the decision anyways. I should have just went for it and just let it go. But I think that later on in his career, Tyron's let some of the outside noise get to him a little bit. Is Tyron still good? Does he have a chin? Can he still fight? Is he too old? You know, is he done? Like, shut all that shit off and just let those bombs go, because he was when he decided to go, he was able to find it.
Absolutely.
But if you only do that a couple times in an 8-round fight, it's tough to win a decision like that.
He fought a way better fight than Jake Paul overall as far as positioning, footwork, movement, pressure, and damage. But the problem is like you said, you know, when he did have him against the ropes or hurt or whatever, he didn't let those hands go. And multiple times he closed the distance. And he's a good friend of mine, and I'm not trying to pick on him because I thought he did a great job as far as going into a new sport and pushing him back and keeping that pressure and control. But I know Tyron could have finished that guy, like watching that fight. Like, I just know Tyron too well. So I don't know. I can't put myself in his shoes. I've never fought boxing, pro boxing match against, especially a YouTuber who you definitely don't want to lose to. And so there's a little bit of pressure and fear in that regard.
Yeah.
And he's running the show, and there's probably all kinds of shit that they know that I don't know behind the scenes. So I can't really put myself in that position, and I don't want to judge, but it's just like I was frustrated that he didn't get that knockout because I know he could have. And I think if he saw the video as we saw it, as it happened, he would have been a lot more confident. I don't know what he was looking at or what he was thinking when he was out there, but if he saw what we saw, he was in position to knock him out 80% of that fight. Like, you know, he was backpedaling on the ropes, and Tyron was keeping that pressure forward. And so I think if they have a second match, that rematch happens, I think hopefully he's going to put that pressure on and show him the difference of someone who's aggressive and someone who's, you know, not as in good a shape or can handle that pressure and backs up too much when they get hit.
Real quick, with Mike Swick.